In 3, 2, 1. This is Acting Mastery. I'm Ben Matthews. Damon Herriman is one of Australia's most versatile and respected actors, with a career spanning over decades across film, television, and theatre. Known for his chameleon-like ability to fully inhabit a wide range of characters, Damon has captivated audiences with performances in critically acclaimed projects, such as his chilling portrayal as Charles Manson in both Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and David Fincher's Netflix series Mindhunter. Damon's most recent film is The Bike Riders, directed by Jeff Nichols, where he starred alongside Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Tom Hardy, and Michael Shannon. His extensive body of work also includes roles in major productions like Clint Eastwood's Edgar opposite Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell Crowe's The Water Diviner, and Oscar winner Barry Jenkins' The Underground Railroad. As you'll also hear, he worked with David Mamet 3 times, including in one instance opposite Al Pacino. Other amazing credits include Breaking Bad, the Aussie hitman series Mr. In Between, and recently the Disney series The Artful Dodger. His IMDb lists at present 119 acting credits. He's won or been nominated for over 35 awards. An actor who learned his craft on the job, Damon continues to push the boundaries of his work, making him truly a compelling figure in the world of acting. In today's episode, we dive deep into Damon's journey, exploring some pivotal moments that shaped his career, his approach to the craft, and lessons he's learned from decades of experience working with some of the most renowned directors and actors in the world. Damon Herriman, welcome to Acting Mastery.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Damon, congratulations on Bike Riders.
Thank you.
I saw it recently and absolutely loved it. I wanted to just ask you a little bit about what it was like working with Tom Hardy and Jodie Comer, and what an incredible cast, Austin Butler.
Yeah, it was an insane cast, actually. It was one of those jobs where you can't quite believe you're going to get to work with those people beforehand, and then you turn up and you're sort of pinching yourself every day. There was one particular scene in that movie which is around a fire, and I think everybody was there. So there was Tom Hardy and Austin Butler and Jodie Comer and Michael Shannon and Norman Reedus, Boyd Holbrook, all these people that I've seen in a million things and, respected, and you sort of try very hard not to have imposter syndrome when you're in that scenario. But they were all really, really nice. I was a bit sort of trepidatious about Tom Hardy. I don't know why. I just thought he'd be intimidating or something, but he was incredibly lovely. Like, really, he'd walk onto set and give everybody a hug, and everybody was awesome.
Had you met him before?
I hadn't. No, I didn't meet him until pretty much I think we started shooting. We didn't really do rehearsals as such, so like pre the shoot. So I hadn't met him before. I was and also just impressed with watching him work, just sort of watching him do so little to achieve so much. If ever there was a kind of masterclass on screen acting, it's sitting there, a meter away from him, watching him, because everything seems to be happening behind his eyes. He doesn't really indicate or kind of, do anything on the surface. It's all kind of, it's all kind of bubbling away, and you sort of go, yeah, I see, you've got that X factor thing. He's got that X factor that you just kind of can't look away.
How would you describe that X factor? What is it for you?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that if people knew what it was, if they could emulate it, that they would bottle it and sell it, right? I think it probably is an innate thing. It's a combination of charm, charisma, talent, just how your face looks. Not necessarily good looking. Sometimes that helps too, but I think sometimes it's just an interesting face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sean Penn's got X factor. Is he classically good looking? No, but he's good looking because he's charming and charismatic, and really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a hard one to describe, but it's ultimately, I think it's just something that makes it hard to look away from an actor.
What was it like watching Jodie Comer at work?
Amazing. She was so incredibly prepared. I felt like she knew her lines like she knew the alphabet. She didn't sort of, she was just so incredibly prepared. She had her accent completely down. Um, Yet between takes, absolutely lovely. Like, so nice, like funny. We laughed a lot. She's really, really a joyful, fun person to be around. And then you sort of see her once action is called, and she is in it. She is 1000% in it.
How did that role come about? Did you audition? Was it?
I did audition. I think this was one of the. It's been about 3 now roles where Joel Edgerton put in a word for me. I mean, now that stuff really does help. It's not the only way you get a role, but it certainly makes the people who are casting, or the director in particular, take notice of you over and above the hundreds of other people they've got in front of them. I can't remember the order of things. I think maybe I got the audition first and put down the tape, and then I think I might have, because Joel's a friend, and I knew Joel had worked with Jeff Nichols a couple of times.
Yeah.
I just sent him a note saying, "Hey, just done an audition for your friend. Feel free to put in a word." You say that kind of half joking, and you don't expect anybody to do that. People have done that to me as well, and I would always do it, because why not?
Right.
Especially because I know how much it helps.
Yeah.
And so I think Joel did just say, "Yeah, this guy sent in a tape. Make sure you look at it." And it just that really makes, because when you're as a lot of people listening to this who are actors know, that feeling of being just one tiny fish in this massive pond. How do I stand out? What can be the thing that's going to make the director notice me, rather than just watch my tape for 7 seconds and go, "No, he's not right." Now, I don't know to what degree Joel saying that got me the role, but what I could be pretty sure of is that the director would have looked at the tape for more than 7 seconds,
Right.
just out of respect for Joel. He would have. He may have only watched it for 7 seconds without that. He might have gone, "No, that guy's not right for anything,"
Yeah.
But because someone had said, "No, you should look at this," he would have probably watched the whole tape, and yeah, it certainly helped a lot. And Joel did a similar thing with the Underground Railroad.
Did he?
He did.
Wow.
To Barry Jenkins.
Amazing.
And he did a similar thing for this film I've got coming up called Together, which is a film with Alison Brie and Dave Franco. They're the leads in it, and he knew Dave, and he in this case it wasn't me contacting Joel. It was Dave contacting Joel saying, "We've got this cool supporting role in the movie. Who would you recommend?" So,
Wow.
Joel Edgerton, thank you for my career.
Thank you, Joel. That's incredible.
Yeah.
How was Jeff Nichols to work with as a
Oh
director?
my God, beautiful. Absolutely perfect. You could not fault him. He is, you hear the term actor's director. He's the quintessential actor's director. Everything about his gentle nature, the way he would communicate, make you feel part of it, make your ideas feel valid, make you feel relaxed. The way he would, from a technical standpoint, the way the film was shot. There's a reason that actors keep wanting to work with Jeff Nichols, and
Right.
and I get that, having worked with him.
What makes an actor's director? He said he was an actor's director.
I guess that term differs depending on the actor, but in a general sense, it means someone who is mostly or is more concerned about making the actor's performance, and the character interactions and the relationships, all the stuff to do with the acting you see on screen. A director who puts that to the forefront, as opposed to a director who doesn't really talk to actors, doesn't really, just sort of leaves them to themselves, tells them where to stand, as opposed to saying, "Where do you think you'd be standing in this scene?"
Right.
And it's more about the shot and getting the shot to look beautiful, and using the crane to do this and that. And So that would be the kind of two ends of the spectrum. The opposite of an actor's director would be someone who gives no direction at all, or screams direction through a megaphone, and it's not helpful at all, and is and but ends up making very pretty pictures. Obviously,
Had a few of those.
luckily, no. I've had maybe a couple, but I've heard of those. Some couple of examples come to mind. But yeah, luckily I've been very fortunate and not, and in fact, very very fortunate in the sense that I think I've worked with people who've got the balance right, because you also don't want an actor's director who makes it look like crap.
Right.
That wouldn't be ideal either. It's you want someone who can do both, and Jeff Nichols is certainly one of them.
You mentioned Barry Jenkins on Underground Railroad, and I don't think I've talked to you about that since I last caught up with you. What was Barry Jenkins like?
I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but very similar to Jeff Nichols, in that, yeah, I mean, it's kind of copy and paste. Very, very similar. And again, that's why people will always work with him. Just so in tune with what he wants, how to get it, how to talk to actors, how to make them feel relaxed. Really pushes you. I mean, that was something I really remember about Barry, is that he didn't take, he wouldn't take a decent enough take as he wouldn't accept a decent enough take as the take and then move on. He would be like, no, come on, there's a little bit more there. We can go further, especially with emotional stuff. And yeah,
Wow.
he really made me feel like I had to absolutely push myself to be like, there was no phoning it in with him. Not that I was going to anyway, but you couldn't, like, he wouldn't let you.
Amazing. Did you learn to ride a motorbike for bike riders?
I did.
How was that?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, I haven't ridden one since. I guess because I don't own one for a start. But look, we had to get our license for it, and so that involved riding lots and lots of Harleys, mostly on like disused car parks and stuff. So it wasn't out in the street. But then we once I got my license, I was out riding in the street.
Wow.
And it was fun. Yeah, I get why people ride them. I still think they're probably ultimately a quick way of losing a limb, because even if you're really good at it, a car just has to sideswipe you and you go skidding along the ground.
Right.
And they're probably not the safest way to get around, but damn, they are a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun one to prepare for.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I thought we might just circle back to the beginning and ask you about how you got started. I know you got started at a very young age. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, I guess I was born in Adelaide, and then when I was 3, my family moved to Alice Springs. And while we were in Alice Springs, my dad got into doing sort of local theatre, amateur theatre stuff, and then through that he got into doing voiceovers, radio commercials. And one day they needed a father and son radio commercial, and my dad had been hired to play the dad, and he said, "Well, why don't you get my son?" And he sort of does, I think he could do acting. He does like characters. He pretends to be an old man or pretends to be this and that, and mimics people. And so they were like, yeah, sure, yeah, we'll get a real father and son and we'll do that. So I ended up with these tapes of these commercials for Nestle chocolate. And when we were about to move back to Adelaide, and my dad thought I should find out what we can do with these tapes of these chocolate commercials. Like, how do we take the next step? Because I feel like my son could actually be an actor. So my dad wrote a letter to Peter Weir, who at the time, this is before even Gallipoli, let alone all the American films he made.
Yeah.
But he'd done Picnic and Hanging Rock and The Last Wave and Cars That Ate Parrots. I think that was it. But he was still a pretty well-known Australian film director. Peter Weir wrote back, I still have the letter, but basically saying, we're moving to Adelaide. What should my son do? I think he could be an actor. And he said, well, you should go and see this agent, Ann Peters, in Adelaide, who is still going, by the way.
Wow.
Who was the only agent in Adelaide. So when we went to Adelaide, I went and met with her, had a meeting with her, and just got signed. I didn't even have to sort of prove anything. I guess because it was Adelaide, it was a small city, and there weren't many other 8-year-olds on her books anyway. So it was just a case of, yeah, I could see you doing ads or something.
Yeah.
And then I did lots of ads. That was kind of what ended up happening. And then the first sort of TV thing that happened was an audition, a general audition with Crawford Productions that my dad had sort of organised, not even the agent. So I'm sort of thankful for my dad, because I really wouldn't have got into this otherwise, I don't think. I did this general audition for Crawford's, and they ended up writing a new character into the Sullivans, which I ended up doing for 8 months, and that sort of kicked off a bunch of work over the next 3 years as a kid.
And the Sullivans was a big hit at the time, right?
It was huge at the time, yeah.
Aussie drama?
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably more of a drama than a soap,
Right.
but it was kind of considered the classy soap of the day,
Right.
Or classy drama of the day. Yeah, it was a nighttime thing. It was actually a really good show. I mean, I don't know if I watched it now how it would hold up, but it was, at the time, it was very respected, and it was a really cool thing to be a part of. And it was set in the 1940s. It was a lot of fun. I only have good memories of that. And then but then when I went to high school after that, I kind of didn't really see. I lost interest a bit. Part of it was just like I had gone from having one school teacher to having 8 at high school, and then going, I don't even know how this is going to work.
Yeah.
I think I'll just sort of put that aside. And it wasn't really until I was about 18 that I decided to take it up again.
One of your first scenes, is that right, was with John Noble?
Oh yes, it was with John Noble. When that was before the Sullivans. That was actually one of the first things I ever did on camera ever, which was an education film for. As a warning against leaving paints and pesticides around kids. I think I ended up drinking paint, something, but John was my dad.
And for those who don't know, John played Denethor in Lord of the Rings, and has had an extraordinary career.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also from Adelaide.
Also from Adelaide. Yeah, that's right. That was probably one of the first actual acting jobs I think I ever had.
And then after high school, how did you get back into it?
Well, my dad got transferred with his work to Sydney, and I'd sort of fallen back into it just because I'd run into this actor that I knew as a kid who was doing a one-woman show in Adelaide. And she was now an actress called Myra de Groot, who's passed now, but she was working for an agency in Melbourne called Stacey Testro, and she said, what are you doing? Do you have a Melbourne or Sydney agent? I said, I don't. She said, well, you should. So I ended up signing with this Melbourne agent whilst also having the agent in Adelaide. Then then they opened an office in Sydney. When my dad got transferred to Sydney, I was 18. I thought, you know what? I don't know what else to do. At that point, I'd also started working at the office my dad worked at, so I could go to Sydney and do that. So it sort of made sense. Go to Sydney, stay living with Dad, keep the office job, and also have an agent there that would be looking after me. And that's what I did. And for the next 9 years, I was actually working in that office, but also going to auditions and things. Doing guesties on TV, and I guess for a couple of years, nothing hugely exciting happened. And then I got a film called The Big Steal, which was sort of the first, for me, it felt like the first big thing that had happened in my whole career, really, because it was a film and I'd never done one before. And
it's an absolute classic of Aussie cinema.
It is. I think it still holds up, and of course Ben Mendelsohn's in it, Claudia Carvin's in it, Steve Bisley. It's a very cool cast, and you think about Claudia and Ben, who were 17 and 21 at the time, and they, to think about what they went on to do.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And what a career! What am I right in thinking you never did any formal training as an actor?
No, I did not. Yeah,
all your training has been on the job.
It has. Yeah. And I think that's, I think that there are way too many good actors who come out of formal training for me to ever criticize formal training. Most of them do, but I think equally, people like Ben Mendelsohn, who I think is probably Australia's best male actor, never did any formal training. I think it's one of those things that it can absolutely bring out the actor, in you that was probably always there bubbling away. And for some people, like me, I don't know if it would have helped or hindered. I guess I don't know because I never did it. But there's no question that the working gives you the training anyway. I only have to look at some of the stuff I did when I was younger and how kind of average it was to realize that I got better at it. And presumably that was through watching people who could do it a lot better than I could.
Did you have any mentors or influences as you were progressing in your career? People that you looked up to as actors or as people that were just further along?
Yeah, but no one particularly, not people that I knew so much. There were kind of careers that I would look at, and like when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Anthony Hopkins, and this is even before Silence of the Lambs. I was obsessed with him after The Elephant Man,
Right.
Even though he was the less flashy role, he was the doctor. But I was like, how do you do that? I want to do that. How do you do what he's doing? And I kind of became obsessed with watching anything he was in. If there was a late night movie on TV, I saw it in the TV guide. If it said Anthony Hopkins, I'd have to set it up to tape it. I was obsessed with him. So people like that, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman, I was massively into, but probably not actual mentors in terms of someone that I had in my life that I knew, but lots of actors that I knew that I respected, like Ben. Even though Ben was someone I'd worked with and was a friend, I also was a fan. I would watch what he did in anything and be so impressed.
With someone like Anthony Hopkins or Philip Seymour Hoffman, would you say that you studied their work?
Not in the sense of sitting down and like actually taking notes or anything.
Yeah.
No, but I guess I kind of did, in the sense that, like, I remember being younger, and if I look at any of my old tapes from the Sullivans, like everything is very performative. Like it's like I'm almost acting in a musical sometimes, even though I'm on TV. Like it's very, I find it quite big. And it's too expressive, and it's
pushing.
It's sort of like, at the time I think I thought, well, you have to, if you're playing someone lying, you have to really act like you're lying. No, I didn't steal the cookies. Which is not how you lie in real life. People are very good at lying. They normally don't look like they're lying,
That's right.
And I think there was something about Anthony Hopkins where every time I would see him in something, I would be so impressed by how he could invoke what he was feeling without doing very much. That at times I was just looking into his eyes and seeing what he was feeling or thinking. And I'd never done that before as an actor. I didn't really know that was a thing. So yeah, I absolutely was attempting to take that on and emulate that as best I could. After when I would watch him in stuff.
How did you begin to figure out how to do that for yourself?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I think initially it was probably just as simple as doing less, thinking, like I remember by the time I did The Big Steal, I was 19, and by then I'd watched a lot of Anthony Hopkins stuff, for example, and I remember in that feeling like just don't do very much, So that was probably the kind of the kicking off point for the difference between what I was doing when I was a little kid and what I was doing at 18. And I don't know. From then on, I don't really know. a lot of it is a lot of it is subconscious. I think like it's I don't think, for example, that I could teach acting because I don't know what I don't know what it is enough in a weird way. Like I don't know how to put it into words enough.
You know how to do it,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
articulate.
yeah, which is a weird thing. But yeah, I guess I certainly grew from just going, okay, don't do too much, to being aware of, okay, you need to listen to what they're saying and you need to respond truthfully to how somebody is speaking to you and the situation you're in, and sort of working up this way, which I guess is a kind of a technique of sorts, which was, I I I don't know who I heard say this, but some point in my 20s I heard that that a good performance was based on uh, you as an actor not reacting as you would and not reacting as the character would. It's reacting as you would if you were that character. And I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but I got what that meant. It's not like, when I'm in a scene, I'm not entirely going, okay, just be how I would be in this scene. But I'm also not going, oh, just be how Charles Manson would be in this scene, or how this, whatever other character would be. I think there is something to that idea of, based on how I know how I react to things and how I respond to the world, how would I do that if I'd also lived in this character's shoes and experienced everything they had? So taking into account everything I've ever observed about human nature, that I've watched in others, everything I've observed in my own human nature, how I behave in certain situations. Now add that to the mix, put them all in a mixing bowl, and now add who this character is, and how, taking all that stuff into account, how I might respond if I had also lived in this character's shoes. And that's kind of what I do.
Do you have a process? Where do you begin? If you get a role like Charles Manson, who you've now played twice, where do you begin?
Well, that one's very different from every other role, I think. Well, nearly every other role, in that it's a real person. I've played real people before, but that was a real person who everybody knows. And if they don't, they can certainly look him up and watch hours of interviews with him if they want to. So, and on top of that, it was in 2 productions that were going to be seen. It wasn't like a short film with mates, that was, no, I knew that everyone was going to see this, and it was a famous person that I had to get right. So that was very different from most jobs, in that it was almost entirely just months of watching him and reading books about him, listening to podcasts about him, editing together interviews of him. Like I realized there were about sort of 8 versions of him that he would present, from, kind of the clown to the kind of, horrific kind of killer, kind of scary guy, to this sort of normal kind of guy, to this sort of bitter guy. Like there was all these different versions of him, and some like getting really, really angry. And so I kind of cut together before I was doing, in the lead up to doing Mindhunter, before I even knew about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, actually, I cut together this 8-minute thing of, and I have one bit called Angry Charlie, Funny Charlie, Charming Charlie, like all these things, because I've been watching so much of it. I was like, okay, so how do I get all that and put it in this 10-minute scene? What do I do? I feel like I don't want to do just one version of him, because I've watched enough interviews to know that he's never just one guy.
Right.
So in that case, it was a lot more technical than I would normally be. And then I had all these different sections, and I'd be like, okay, when in the scene can I use that version of him, where he's being like that? With a normal role, it's very different. I don't take notes or anything. I don't have a notated script, which is very unusual. And I think that's partly just not having done training, because when you do training, you're taught to do that.
Right.
I would write notes on a script if I'd been in rehearsal and the director had given me notes because I want to remember it. But I don't go through the script myself and take notes. I really just it's a combination of reading the script. If it's well written, I feel like the character kind of leaps out at you, and you immediately can see yourself doing it.
Right.
Especially if you're right for it, and it doesn't always feel like you're right for it. But if you feel like you're right for it and it's well written, I feel like that's often all I need, especially if there's a little character breakdown that comes with it, which is the writer describing that character and how they see that character. That often helps because sometimes it includes stuff that isn't really in the script, but gives you, a background information. And then on top of that, I would just talk to the director about how they see the character, and give any ideas that I might have. You talk about things like, how they look. It's sort of amazing how much of a difference it makes when you have a certain look. I think about like just something. It's not even that extreme, but like the character Freddie in Mr. In Between, where I play this guy who owns a nightclub. They did such a great job with his look, which is like these kind of open neck shirts with these kind of chains and sort of pleated pants, and then these shoes with no socks and the hair combed back. And you just go, yeah, I know that guy. I've seen that guy. Now I'm dressed sort of not like that today, and my hair's not slicked back and I just feel like I wouldn't quite know how to do Freddie dressed like I am right now.
Right.
Which is ridiculous, but there is really, it's amazing when you get to go to set and see yourself in the mirror before you walk out, and know that 40% of the job is done for you based on just how you look, and it elevates. It not only elevates your performance from just because you look like the character, it helps you be a better actor, knowing you look like that.
Yeah.
The Mindhunter makeup, for example, was so insanely good. Like my whole face was Charles Manson.
You looked like Charles Manson. Yeah. It's almost hard to tell you apart.
Do you know what? I've actually seen articles online about Charles Manson where they've used a photo of me in Mindhunter accidentally as Charles Manson.
Wow.
Because it looks so much like him.
Right.
So that's another example. Like that's the most extreme example of that thing where you look in the mirror and you look like that, right down to the flared jeans and the kind of everything,
the hair.
Everything looked like him.
Yeah.
And then I could start to move in a way that the hair would flop in a way that I'd seen on all these videos. And suddenly I'm kind of going into this thing going, I mean, talk about, actors often talk about, how, they like the mask of playing a character, they don't like I don't like public speaking, right? Because and that there's that thing of like a lot of actors don't because they don't have the mask of the character. Well, this was like the mask times 1,000. Like it was literally a mask. So I felt like I was 60%. I feel like 60% of my performance was done before I had to open my mouth.
Wow.
Because I was him. Like it was like this is mine to mess up now because I've been given the gift of looking exactly like the person I'm playing.
How important was figuring out his physicality in your preparation? Because I noticed what a physical role that was.
Yeah, it was interesting. And that's something, again, I wouldn't normally think about. I don't sort of, there might be a little thing where you kind of go, maybe he sort of walks a bit like this when you're playing a role. But it's normally not like, oh, I'm going to give him a limp. It's just something subtle that just makes you go, yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
With him, no, he had a particular way of moving. He was sort of very fluid. It was sort of this kind of sneaky, slithery kind of, and like a lot of kind of movements and hands through hair and kind of. It was something that definitely I wanted to bring into it. Having watched so many interviews with him. It was really just a matter of, when I would see a bit where he was being particularly physical, I would play that back and forth in my living room and get up and try and do it.
Right.
I would try and get used to walking around like he did, And he also was quite hunched, which is weird because he was only like 5'3". It was, normally you're trying to look taller than you are when you're short.
Yeah.
I know. But he was like 5'3" and was like this kind of, or except interestingly in Mindhunter, they did something which he really did do when he was interviewed by the FBI, which was to create height. He sat on the back of his chair,
Right.
the top back of his chair.
I wasn't sure if that was a choice or if that was something that you were
that
asked
was
to do.
in the script.
Wow.
And it was in the script because he had actually done it.
Wow.
In interviews with the FBI.
How fascinating. How much of your work normally is either inside out or outside in? Or is the outside in kind of the final piece to the puzzle? Like you said, when you look in the mirror and you see Freddy from Mr. In Between. Do you get much of a say in how you want to look in some of these roles?
Yeah, they normally say, "What are you thinking?" I tend to really, in most cases, leave it in the hands of, especially with the costume. I feel like that's their department,
Yeah.
and they get you to try lots of different things.
Right.
So it would be unusual if everything they picked for you was wrong. Normally, there are a few options, and you kind of spoil for choice. With things like hair and makeup, yeah, they'll usually say you go in for a test and thing.
Yeah.
They'll talk about that, and I think with the Freddy example, I think that was a pretty immediate thing to go. I think kind of like an oily, slicked back thing. That just feels like what he would do.
Right.
And it does create such a very particular look. Like I know on my head looks different with that look. It creates someone more Freddy-like. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think in terms of the outside, the outside kind of look stuff is kind of more the cherry on top at the end, as opposed to going, I need to see how I look to know who I am. I feel like that again, if the script's well written, you see who the character is on the page, and the look of the character is something you want to try and make fit that, as opposed to the other way around.
You mentioned playing Charles Manson twice, and I was always under the assumption that you had booked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood first, but in actual fact, it was Mindhunter that you booked first?
It was, yeah, and they had essentially nothing to do with each other. There was a tenuous link. So basically, in October 2017, I think it was, I got an audition for Mindhunter, which was to shoot the following July, which was insanely early for an audition for American TV. American TV, when you're playing a guest role, you usually are auditioning for something that's shooting in a week or less.
Right.
So this was, what is that, 8 months or something. But that was because of the makeup job that Kazu had to do. They needed that amount of time for the lead up.
Just tell everyone who Kazu is.
Kazu is an amazing Japanese prosthetic makeup artist who has won more than one Oscar. He did the
Gary
Oldman turning into Winston Churchill. He did the recent Maestro. I mean, a bunch of them. The one about Fox News.
Bombshell.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a fraction of the stuff he's done. They're always extraordinary. Like he's the best at doing that.
Wow. How many hours in the makeup chair was that?
When he was first sort of testing it the first time, I think it was about 5.
Wow.
I think by the time we were on sort of day 3 of the shoot, it was maybe 3 hours or something. But I think it was like 3.5, then got down to 3.
Wow. So you had auditioned for that?
I auditioned for that and then had a callback. So I auditioned for that on a self-tape, bought a wig, so I sort of looked remotely like Charles Manson. Went in to do an audition in the room with the casting director with some notes. Then a third audition at home with more notes from David Fincher. And then found out I got that role and started the process of getting my head kind of like a mask, like a what do they call it? basically copying my entire head so that Kazu could then make the makeup around it.
Yeah. Like a plaster.
Yeah, plaster thing. And then I spent, most days for the next 6 months watching, reading, absorbing everything Charles Manson, knowing that this was coming up. I then happened to speak to, I was emailing with an actor friend, Nicholas Hammond.
Yes.
Nicholas Hammond, if you don't know his name, he was Friedrich in The Sound of Music,
That's right.
the original movie. He was the oldest little blonde boy.
And he was the original Spider-Man.
And he was the original Spider-Man, which is why, through Spider-Man, it was why Quentin Tarantino had cast him as Sam Peckinpah in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I knew he was doing that, and I was emailing him about how excited I was. And I think he was already over in LA starting on it. And he had said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm about to do this Charles Manson thing. And he wrote back saying, they haven't got Charles Manson in the movie yet. You should go for that. And I was like, well, Nicholas, they're not going to cast the same guy, are they? That's insane. And he then happened to have that same conversation on set with Timothy Olyphant, who I had worked with on Justified.
Right.
Timothy Olyphant knew that Quentin Tarantino was a Justified fan.
Wow.
And happened to see him on set and say, hey, have you cast Charles Manson yet? I was just talking to Nicholas. What about Damon, who played Dewey Crowe? And Quentin knew who that was because he watched the show. And he was like, yeah, we haven't cast it yet. Yeah, well, sure, I'll get a tape. Next thing I know, I've got a tape to play this character called Shaggy Man. They didn't have the name. And of course, there's no full script. It's just the pages.
Right.
Which, by the way, they couldn't. It was so secretive. They FedExed them from America. They couldn't email them.
Wow.
They FedExed the actual pages. And
and
I knew. I knew.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew. Absolutely knew who
Right.
it was. It was very, very apparent. And I'm thinking, well, this is insane because I couldn't be more sort of prepared to audition for a role. I've spent 6 months preparing for this role. And I'm also not going to be able to do it because they're not going to cast the same guy. I was convinced about that.
Right.
But I did think, you know what, I should do a really good audition, or try to, because there might be something else in the movie. And it's an audition for Quentin Tarantino.
Absolutely.
I have to try and do a good job. So I did this audition, and then I flew to America to shoot Mindhunter. The first day I landed, I did a makeup test in the makeup for the first time, having only done sort of fitting stuff earlier. The next day, I got a call saying, you got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I was just like, this is crazy. And they were like, aren't you happy? And I was like, yeah, but I'm not going to be able to do it. Like, and I can't even, like, there was not even like a choice. You know, Mindhunter was such a great scene anyway. I don't know what the choice would have been, but I was shooting Mindhunter in 2 weeks, and my makeup was all done. So there was no question about the fact that I was going to be doing Mindhunter. And so I was like, well, Quentin Tarantino is going to hear that and say, no, thank you, but we'll get someone else. They called back and said, no, we've checked, he's fine. I'm pretty sure they said he liked it. He liked the idea. Sort of like a multiverse thing of like, it's the same guy. There's not like, which actor did you prefer? Because it's the same one.
Wow, the stars aligned.
Yeah, and they all ended up shooting, I think within 4 weeks, I'd done both.
That's extraordinary. And then when you were playing Charles Manson for Tarantino, you basically had no makeup on. Is that
very
right?
little?
Just
very little. Yeah. It was sort of facial hair and a wig.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess they just they decided not to go down the same kind of route that Fincher had. You know, Fincher. If you look at Mindhunter, he got sort of amazing prosthetics done on a bunch of different characters who were playing real people. So it's.
So you shot Mindhunter first, then Once Upon a Time.
Yes, I think then 2 weeks later I was doing Once Upon a Time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking, so Fincher gave you all those notes on Charles Manson.
Mm-hmm.
Did he direct that episode?
No, it was directed by Andrew Dominic, who's an Australian, brilliant director in his own right.
Brilliant director.
Who
made Chopper.
And
The Assassination of Jesse James.
Yes, Blonde recently. So it was pretty amazing. David Fincher was still on set about 60% of the time. So he was sort of sitting watching the video screens as a producer, really.
Right.
And it was pretty bizarre to go, wow, there's David Fincher watching Andrew Dominic
my
watch
God.
me. It's such a weird, like,
No pressure.
no pressure.
While playing Charles Manson.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Wow. And because Fincher had set that show up, I remember you saying before that it meant that Andrew Dominic also had to keep the same shooting style, which meant a lot of coverage.
A lot of coverage, a lot of takes. Yeah, they shot that scene, which was mostly three guys sitting around a table. They shot it from 40 camera angles. That means there are 40 different shots to choose from for this 10-minute scene, and minimum 10 takes per setup.
Oh my God.
So there would have been hundreds of options for the editor to go to at any one time. Not only which shot, but which take of that shot.
How many cameras running at any given time?
3 were always running.
Right.
Yeah.
And how?
So there'd be like 1, 2, 3 in front of you.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And then how long were you shooting for? How many times do you think you had to do that scene?
I definitely did that scene over 100 times, and it was the full 10 minutes every single time.
My God.
Yeah, so it was over 3 days. Yeah, definitely not even a close second for the hardest thing I've ever had to do physically. I think not even just as actor, just anything I've done physically. It was like I say, it's like running a marathon with a gun to my head.
I think Andrew Garfield described it the same way when he did The Social Network. He said it was a marathon,
right?
Working with Fincher.
Yeah.
So,
and you're so glad you've done it, but at the time, and that's sort of the thing. At the time, you're going, just get through it. There's only a day and a half to go. You know, you're going to be so glad, because there was zero regret about it. It was just hard, but it wasn't hard in the way that I was going, I wish I wasn't doing this. I was so happy to be doing it.
Right.
I just was like, this is definitely, I'm the gas is on empty, and I still have to do a half a day.
How do you maintain that stamina? How do you maintain it when you're on set on a shoot like that?
Well, that one was so different from every other shoot.
Right.
That one was, and I couldn't eat solid food. I could only drink smoothies all day because of the makeup.
Oh my God.
It was, I don't know. I mean, I think the only answer is because I had to. There was no guys, I needed 2 hours sleep or something. Like that's not an option.
No.
It was just when they'd say, okay, we're going for another one, you had to go, okay, here comes that 10 minutes again where I don't stop talking.
Uninterrupted?
Pretty much. Yeah.
And would you find different things every time you did it, or was it fairly consistent? Like they kind of wanted the same thing each time?
It was fairly consistent. I think it was more, Andrew is a director who does give quite a few notes. So a lot of it was playing, remembering the notes that I'd had between takes. Mm-hmm. With my sleep-deprived brain, trying to remember the lines and the notes that had gone in the between the 2 takes that I was doing. So, it was. Yeah, normally it's not that physically draining.
Did you know Andrew before that?
I did. Yeah. I didn't know him super well, but we'd sort of met a few times.
That's great.
Through friends.
And then, what was it like working with Tarantino?
Amazing. I mean. Everything you would hope, Yeah. He that sort of joyful kind of teenage energy that he has about movies is palpable on set. He feels like the whole time he's there, he's excited. And his catchphrase would be he would say blah 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 because we love making movies. He would say that a lot, and he didn't do many takes. He actually would probably do 2 or 3, and then sometimes he'd say, let's do one more because we love making movies, which was kind of like we got it, but let's just do one for fun, which is a nice feeling as an actor. I think whenever a director says, we got it, let's just do one, do whatever you want. I love that, because you don't even necessarily do anything crazy, but you do one that you go, there's no pressure on this take at all. But yeah, he was really, and the whole set is just loose and friendly and calm. No one's yelling. There's no time crunch at all. Every night they invite all the cast and crew to watch the rushes on a film projector at the
Wow.
production office, like they used to.
Right.
So
Did you go?
I did. I went this one day. It was a day that none of mine were on yet, and I probably wouldn't have wanted to be there for that anyway. But yeah, I think on my first day shooting, they said, "Are you coming to Daly's tonight?" I'm like, "What? Why would I be? Why? What?" They're like, "Yeah, everyone can come. It's at the production office." And you turn up, and there's like all these snacks and drinks, and like this kind of awesome, couches and beanbags, and a film projector going projecting film like it's 1945.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then there was this other thing that at some point, it was on my last day. I did shot for 3 days, and there was a thing where people said, that's Slate 500 or something. It was some number like that. Everyone started applauding. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm clapping Slate 500. Well done, 500. And then all these trestle tables come out, booze. And it was like 2 PM. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, every 100 slates we drink.
As you do.
As you do. I'm sure this is like some kind of OH&S issue that is not acceptable. But it's Quentin Tarantino. He can drink booze at 2 PM if they want. I was like, hold on. What if it was 7 AM and it was the 100th slate? I'm like, yeah, we still drink.
Wow.
I was like, wow, this is like really like making movies in the old days where it was just this loose, kind of awesome, fun celebration of what you get to do as a job.
Was that before you had to do your takes?
No, I had finished.
Okay.
I was so lucky because I had they do a pretty heavy pour of spirits over there. I had a gin and tonic and I was like drunk. I was like, I'm really glad I don't have to go and act now.
Right. Wow, how extraordinary.
Yeah.
You'd worked with DiCaprio before on J. Edgar, directed by Clint Eastwood. Tell us about that. How did that come about, working with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that, that show Justified that I did opened a few doors in a way that hadn't before, because I just didn't have any credits anybody knew. That one helped open a door to this casting director who casts for Clint Eastwood. And it just so happened that role required a German accent. And, it's a very American thing that if there's an accent of any kind, they just get all the foreigners to audition for it.
Bring in the foreigners.
It's like, this is the non-American role, so anyone who's not American can go for this role. And so I guess had enough of a physical resemblance to the real guy. It was Bruno Hauptmann, who was the kidnapper of the Lindbergh baby in the 30s. And
were you in the States at the time when you auditioned?
I think I was. Yeah, I was. I was there. And so I went in, did one audition. He wasn't there. Apparently he chooses not to go to auditions because he knows that seeing Clint Eastwood in the room can put people off, which is fair enough.
Yeah. So it was in the room, an in-the-room audition.
In the room audition, but not with him.
Right.
And then I was back in Australia when I heard I got that. In fact, it was like 6 weeks later or something. But it was long enough to think you definitely didn't get it. And that was one of the best calls I've ever had career-wise. Just because I'd grown up watching Clint Eastwood, I couldn't believe that I was going to work with Clint Eastwood.
Another pinch me moment.
Yeah, totally. And then worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, who's the loveliest guy. Yeah. Really, really sweet. A really nice guy. I worked with him in scenes on that. On Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we didn't have scenes, but I saw him on set. And then I actually saw him again recently at the Bike Riders premiere. He was just there to hang out and watch the movie and stuff, and just a sweetheart. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What's Clint Eastwood like as a director? How does he like to run a set?
Very quiet, famously so. Very calm. Doesn't like any noise.
Doesn't call action.
Doesn't really say action. He did say it a couple of times. I was like, I thought you didn't say action. The story is you don't say action. What are you doing? He did say action a couple of times, but usually he would say, when you're ready, or he'd say, okay, Damon, in your own time, something like that. Very quiet, very, that voice he has.
Yeah.
Almost no direction, which I'd also heard, and it was absolutely true.
He trusts you.
I think he has said in the past that apparently his direction is casting the actor correctly, and then that's it. You know, it's over to them. I don't know that he ever. I don't think he gave me any direction. I don't think I saw him give direction other than one time he asked an actor to be a little faster. But yeah, amazing to not get direction. I've got to say, it helped. It helped with the intimidating circumstances. Like I was there doing a movie directed by Clint Eastwood. There's Leonardo DiCaprio over there. The last thing I needed was 12 notes every take. Like that would have probably made me. There was something very freeing about going, okay, well, I guess if there was something horribly wrong, he'd say. So it kind of gave you a bit of confidence to go with your gut.
Wow.
But it was a lovely experience, and I really I loved that quiet, calm, almost like a library. Like it's just no one's raising their voice at any time.
Watching actors like Leonardo DiCaprio up close, or as you mentioned earlier, Tom Hardy and Jodie Comer, and you know, now Austin Butler as well. You said you've just worked with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
What have you learnt watching actors of that kind of caliber and that reputation up close?
It's. I mean, the thing is, there are so many different actors and so many different things sometimes you're learning what not to do.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there are things you learn to do. Sometimes, you know.
I'd love to hear some of those too.
Well, you know, I won't name the actors,
name names.
but
No,
but
yeah.
you know, yeah, there are certainly actors I've worked with before who are really famous and respected, and up close I've gone, yeah, I don't know if you weren't famous, whether I would know that you should be famous. Like I've kind of gone, oh yeah, I guess I'm just used to you being in stuff a lot. That that I assume you're really good, and being here really close to your face, watching you, I'm like, yeah, you're not bad, but I'm not going, wow, not blown away. That's the biggest surprise to me, because I just assume, but there's a bit of a sort of an Emperor's New Clothes thing to it, I think, where you're just like, well, you're so and so, and you have this career, so I'm putting you on this pedestal. And look, obviously they're good, because it's not like when I'm watching them in movies, I've gone, are you that great? You know, I didn't. It was just a couple of little moments with a few different people where I've just been like, in person, I'm seeing you do stuff that I wouldn't normally be impressed by in the way that I'm impressed by other people who aren't sort of doing that. And it was often in situations where people may be doing a little too much, sort of indicating too much what they were feeling in the moment, rather than just trusting that
the camera will pick it up.
Yeah, and that is the thing, I think I've picked up from the really good actors, is that the camera will pick it up. It's almost as simple as think it and the camera will pick it up. Especially because in most situations the audience knows what you're going to be thinking. So, for example, if the camera's on you and someone's talking about the fact that your character's, having an affair, and they're joking, going, well, as if you'd ever have an affair, right? You don't need to sit there going, squirm, 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 I'm really having an affair, because that's not what you do.
Right.
But if you just think about the fact, fuck, if I get caught for that affair, and the camera's on you, and the audience knows you're having the affair, they're going to read everything. You don't need to do anything other than think, dear God, I hope I'm not found out. And that's what I find, that's the actors that I watch that I get impressed by, where I'm like, I can so see that you're dying inside right now and you're virtually doing nothing with your face.
And the audience are projecting onto them
The
anyway.
audience are projecting, the camera might be moving in too. So it's like, it's all going on. You don't need to gild the lily at all. It's all happening for you. You could literally probably think about what's for dinner tonight in that moment, actually. And the camera pushing in on you will be enough. Not that I would suggest doing, but I mean, you probably could.
Do you ever get self-conscious on set? Do you still get self-conscious?
100%.
And how do you get past that?
Yeah. Look, it's got better with age. I think the older you get, the less you care about what other people think of you anyway.
Right.
You know, it sucks getting older, but that is probably the one good bit. Like, because when you're younger, you're just always caring about what people think about you. When you're older, you just like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know. So just having that removed in itself makes you feel more comfortable on set, because you're just like, you know, I think that combined with the fact that I've done it for so long now, that I can convince myself now, finally, that I don't have to be worried.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't have to be like, the imposter syndrome is less and less, you know, because it used to be major, you know. But it's only really the last 3 or 4 years that I could say that. And I still can turn up to set and find the nerves are there, and, you know.
Is there anything you say to yourself or that you do when that
Yeah,
comes
I
up?
mean, it really just, you know, reminding yourself that, I mean, that's what I would say to any actor, really. If they turn up on set and feel, oh God, everyone's going to hate me, everyone's going to think I'm terrible, and it's like, you got the job. You were picked for this, you know. And that's something to remember. Like, there could have been 200 people that were considered for this, and they chose you. So rather than go, oh my God, I'm going to ruin it, go, oh no, I've been selected. You know, they've already invested in me as being the correct decision. So you don't have to do anything other than just do what got you the job in the first place.
Such good advice. I just wanted to circle back again to earlier in your career. Something that I was always a really big fan of your short films that you made early on. I remember The Date that you directed with Rose Byrne, Saw, which is still one of my favorite short films ever, and The Hitch that you made with Michael Booth.
Yeah.
How important was creating your own work at that point in your career?
Very, very important. And I would say to any young actors who have time on their hands and feel like they're not doing enough and they want to be creative, if you can make short films, if you can find a way to do it, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to make this kind of big budget thing, especially today. You can do it with an iPhone. I think it was important for 2 reasons. One was it did make me, you know, I had lots of gaps in, you know, but when I was acting in my 20s and 30s, and I really sort of started making shorts, I guess between about 27 and 35 was when I did it a lot. And in that period, I had a lot of time on my hands, and it was a chance to be creative and feel creative and use that pool of creativity that you would normally and hopefully direct into acting, and you could direct it into something else, whether that be writing or directing or both, or acting in the thing that you're writing or directing. Getting together with a group of like-minded friends who also want to do that, it's a great feeling. It's really exciting. You can then enter them in festivals. It gets into festivals. It's even more exciting. On top of that, it creates relationships that are very likely to pay off down the track as well. So it's not just for the creative side and the fun side of it. It actually can have benefits to your career in the long run, you know, because you end up working with other actors, other filmmakers that could potentially hire you. I mean, 2 that come to mind are Abe Forsyth and Nash Edgerton, who I did shorts with back in the day when we were all just younger guys doing shorts, and they went on to, you know, make film and TV shows that I ended up being cast in, you know, with
like
both
Mr. In Between.
Like Mr. In Between, yeah. And those relationships were absolutely forged through the shorts.
Amazing. And another short that you were responsible for helping create was The 11 O'Clock, which am I right in thinking that started as a sketch that Josh
It was a sketch that Josh Lawson wrote.
Yep.
And he then turned that. It was like a theater sketch, really.
Yeah.
It was a theater. I mean, it wasn't like a play, but it was more like a sketch, which he then wrote a film version of it. A mutual friend of ours, Darren Seal, directed it. And then it got nominated for an Oscar. It was insane.
Insane. That something that started as a sketch would end up as an Oscar nominated film.
And there's absolutely no way anybody thought anything remotely like that. You don't sort of finish shooting it and go, I think we might have an Oscar nominee in our hands. Like you just you kind of go, I felt like that went well, and that's it. And you're like, hopefully it cuts together well, and suddenly it's like getting into stuff, winning stuff. It's like, oh, it just won this festival. If you win that, you're eligible to be, seen by the Oscar committees. And it's like, suddenly we're in the short 100. And then we're like, the short 100 out of the world, we're in the 100. And then you're like, now we're in the short 10.
Wow.
The short list of 10. You're like, but the next one's the nominees. Yeah, like,
5.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you go to the Oscars that
year? I did. Only because I was, thankfully, I was either Darren or Josh's guest, because they were the two nominees.
Right.
As the writer and director. But yeah, it was pretty awesome.
How amazing. Also, earlier on, just to circle back again, I wanted to maybe get you to speak about how, I remember, because I've known you for a long time, when you first went to LA was it around 2000?
When I first went, it was end of 99, yeah.
And that was before you'd made House of Wax.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that experience, because I remember you coming back and being very deflated around that time.
Very deflated, yeah. Oh my God, it was the worst probably time of my life.
Yeah.
I got a green card in the green card lottery,
Mm-hmm.
and my agent at the time had opened up a management office in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of made sense when I went for the green card as I'll just enter it and see what happens. And then I got it, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I should go to America then. I've got a manager now because my agent has a management office. And I was pretty naive. I sold everything in Australia, had a big farewell party. I said, I'll see you in a year. And I went over there, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. I didn't get an agent, and the manager alone wasn't enough to get me auditions, so I didn't audition for anything. I didn't really have any friends. I had a girlfriend in Sydney who I was missing terribly. I would wake up, I ended up just like watching Jerry Springer every day. I didn't know what to do. I was so badly planned. I think I just thought, well, I can act, and they make stuff over there, so I'll go over there and act in some stuff. Right. It was like that naive. Yeah. And what I realized pretty quickly was they want to know what your American credit is. I don't have one. Well, they want to know what the Australian movie is that they've seen. You haven't seen any that I've done. Well, are you 19 and hot? No, I'm 30 and average looking. Okay, well, we don't want you here.
Right.
Like, that's what it kind of felt like.
Yeah.
And so after 10 weeks, I left very depressed.
Yeah.
And came home and was really kind of depressed for a good few months after that. And I'd sold everything. So I had to sort of start again. And then I'd run into people and they'd be like, what are you doing back? And I'd have to go, LA's shit. Like, try to, you don't want to go there. It's, I just felt like a failure, and I was embarrassed.
How long did you say you were there for?
10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you give up the green card?
I eventually did give up the green card. Yeah. I've got one again now. I applied again recently, and I have one. But and I didn't. I basically went, okay, well, I tried that. That was a disaster. I don't need to do that again. And the only thing that changed was when I got a role in House of Wax, which was an American film shooting in Queensland, and
with Paris Hilton.
Yeah. And all the cast were saying, you've got to come to the premiere when it comes out. And I thought, you know what? I had such a bad time in LA. I should go to LA for the premiere. That'll be fun. I'll have a fun memory of LA. Yeah. And I did. And while I was there, had a couple of meetings with agents and managers and things, and got signed. And then I did slowly, very slowly, started getting some work over the next few years.
Tell us about the character you played in House of Wax.
I played a Southern kind of inbred, like something out of the movie Deliverance. I had kind of like, I had like this a Billy Bob Thornton kind of mouth thing that made my jaw stick out. And, you know, dirt all over my face and southern accent and the trucker cap. And yeah, it was fun. I played this guy who was who basically collected roadkill or dumped roadkill for a living. And it was, you know, I was probably only in the movie for 8 minutes or something, but it was a really fun role.
And am I right in thinking that after that you started getting a lot more roles for kind of like hillbilly, redneck?
100%. Yeah, I couldn't get those roles in Australia. In fact,
What was your typecast here before?
Nerds and nice guys.
Mm-hmm.
Guy next door, you know, nerdy best friend.
Right.
Kind of computer guy with glasses. Just, yeah, sort of sweet, nice. And I couldn't even get auditions for anybody that was in any way villainous or on the street or anything that was not clean cut.
Yeah.
I couldn't get auditions for. And I got an audition for that one, partly because I think Tom McSweeney, who was casting it, just took a punt. And then the director, you know, was American, and I turned up looking like the character. I turned up looking like, which I never normally do, but I did in this case because I was so sick of this not getting the role because I didn't look right. So I turned up. I put sticks in my mouth so my jaw stuck out, and I put mud on my face and had a cap and like a flannelette shirt, and I really did look the part.
Wow, you like went full Brando.
I did, yeah. And it worked.
Yeah.
And then that became my only credit in America that they knew, which then led to more characters like that for years. Combined with the fact that when you're going there for the first time and you're doing a lot of TV guest roles, they're often the bad guys in episodic TV. And so that in itself leads to bad guy roles just naturally.
Right.
And so I then just played a lot of, you know, rednecks and yeah, so forth.
How long had you been in the States after House of Wax? First of all, after House of Wax, you began to audition for American stuff?
Yeah, so after House of Wax premiered, I went over there for the premiere, stayed for a month, got an agent and a manager, went home for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then came back for a solid 3-month stay. And that's kind of how I did it for the next several years. I would do these, a lot of my friends would do it differently. They would sort of go and move there for a year or two, or they'd go for these really short trips, like 2 weeks or something.
Right.
And I felt like the 2 weeks wasn't enough, and I felt like the moving there essentially to live, particularly after my first experience, was probably not ideal. And I was doing voiceovers and stuff back in Australia, so I wanted to come home and be able to earn money to then fund going back again. So I would sort of do these 3-month trips, have about 4 or 5 months at home, do another 3-month trip. That's what I did for a long time. So after House of Wax premiere, went for 3 months, few auditions, no callbacks, didn't get anything. Came home. Same thing happened the second trip, 3-month trip, few auditions, no callbacks, nothing happened. Now I'm very glass half empty. I'm like, I take a hint very, very quickly. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not gonna work here. I didn't think I would anyway. So this is just, you know, this is just proving what I assumed. I thought I'm gonna make one more trip of this 3-month trip, and then that'll be it. And I genuinely believed that and meant that. I didn't want to be one of these people who I thought would be deluded. I didn't want to be deluded. Right. I didn't want to be like, dude, take a hint. You're not going to work here. So I went for this third trip. The second day I was there, I got an audition for a guest role in a TV show called The Unit, which I had never heard of. Right. It was a CBS TV show. I went to the audition. It was for this kind of hard-assed army sergeant, which was, you know, Bialy Thomas, this casting agent. Very cool that they got me. Yeah. So cool that they got me in for that, because that was nothing like I'd done before. And
it happened to be written and directed by
David Mamet.
Yeah.
And she said, we're going to get you back this afternoon to meet David Mamet. And I was like, the playwright David Mamet. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, what's he doing here? What's he got to do with this show? It's like, he created it, and he sometimes writes and directs the episodes, and he's written and directed this one. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to meet David Mamet. This is crazy. And at that point I thought, you know what, if I never work here, I'm still going to feel like this whole thing was worth it, because I'm going to audition for David Mamet. So I went away that afternoon and studied the thing like crazy to make sure I could, you know, do a good job, and came back, met David Mamet. He was lovely, super friendly and did the audition, and then maybe an hour later got the call saying you got the part. And that was my first job in America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, David Mamet.
Yeah, yeah.
And he got you back again for his film Red Belt.
He did. Yeah. That was really cool. That was my first time doing a film over there. And yeah, it wasn't a very big role, but it was David Mamet asking you to do his movie. You know, I was again just like, this is insane. You know. And yeah, he was, and there's a third David Mamet story, actually. I don't know if I've told you this one. About 8 years after that, I was doing this series in New York called Flesh and Bone, which is I only did one season, but it's a really cool,
I saw it.
cool show.
It's great.
Yeah, right.
The homeless guy.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And I got this call saying, oh, that's right. It was a direct call from David Mamet's assistant. And I was like, hi, this is so-and-so, David Mamet's assistant. I'm like, hi. It's been 8 years. What's going on? And she said, where are you right now? Can you be in Los Angeles on this date? And I was like, I'm in New York, but maybe? She's like, well, David's written this new play, and it's a two-hander, and he wants to, he was wondering if you'd be available to do the reading. It would be you and Al Pacino.
I did not know this story. Wow.
And I dropped the phone, obviously, and I was like, sorry, Al Pacino, me and Al Pacino. She's like, yeah, it's mostly him. It's mostly his character, but he's got this kind of, this PA who comes in and speaks to him occasionally, but you know, it's mainly Al's role. But anyway, it would be you guys, and then the director was, I can't remember her name now, but she just won the Tony Award for Best Director.
Right.
So it was like, so it would be in a room, me, David Mamet, this Tony Award winning director, and Al Pacino, and I was just like, okay. I'm thinking, why does he want me? It's not like I hadn't worked for him other than Red Belt was the last thing, which I think was literally 8 years earlier. So I suddenly go, look, you know what? I'm just going to say, yes, that's definitely possible. And let's just say it's possible. I had no idea what my schedule was in terms of working in New York. I didn't know how I was going to get back. I knew I'd have to pay my own way. And it was like, it was a reading they were doing in LA. So I called my manager straight away. I was like, you're not going to believe this. And I said, can you please call whoever at Flesh and Bone and just say, I have to not be working on this date. Just tell them why. I'm sure they'll send you, you know. Anyway, I can't remember if they moved stuff or if I wasn't working anyway, but it ended up being cleared. I flew myself back to LA.
Oh my God. What was that like?
I mean, so you talk about imposter syndrome.
No
my
kidding.
God. I was just like.
Just you and Pacino.
And then I'm sitting next to Al Pacino,
Yeah.
and there's David Mamet and the Tony Award winning director, and I'm just like, you know, one of these things is not like the other ones, to quote Sesame Street. And it was pretty damn clear which one it was. And I was just like, don't give in, don't let them know that you shouldn't be here. Don't do that. So I was just like trying to act natural and relaxed, which was damn near impossible in that room.
Oh my God.
But
how'd it go?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, that was one of the actors where I was absolutely watching him going, oh yeah, I get why you're brilliant. You are absolutely as brilliant as everyone thinks.
Yeah.
Like there was no moment of going, oh yeah. No, he was, even just in this read, he was just amazing.
Wow.
And really, really nice.
Yeah, and someone who seems to just be willing to try anything.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So also that relationship that you forged with Sharon Bialy and Sherry Thomas, the casting directors in LA, meant that they also got you in for Breaking Bad.
They
Is
did.
that correct?
They did. In fact, they probably have got me in more than any other casting director over there.
Look at that.
Yeah, Breaking Bad was, I think at that point I had done Justified, but that was maybe, it was around the same time as J. Edgar, actually, I remember. Because I lost weight to do J. Edgar because the guy had very prominent cheekbones. That was in the script. Someone described they saw someone with prominent cheekbones. And we're like, well, if that line's in the script, I've got to have prominent cheekbones. I remember saying to the makeup people, are you going to do anything? Because I don't have super prominent cheekbones. And she's like, no. I'm like, that line isn't going to make any sense. So I was like, I'm going to have to get really skinny to have prominent cheekbones.
So you went full method on
Yeah, I did a little bit with that one. And then it turned out really well because that role in Breaking Bad was as this meth head with his shirt off. And I was really skinny still.
Yeah.
And so it kind of worked well. But yeah, they got me in. They actually got me in. This has just come back to me now, actually. For anyone who's seen the episode, it's where Jesse goes to this house and knocks on the door, and this guy answers, and Jesse kind of he tells him to dig a hole in the ground or something, doesn't he? He distracts him like that by saying, I need you to dig this hole. And I'm in the background yelling out, Tucker, 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 which is the other character's name. Anyway, I auditioned for the other guy. I went in for the guy that answers the door. And I remember after doing the audition, this honestly just came back to me now, I totally forgot. But after doing the audition, either Sharon or Sherry, whoever was running it, said, actually, can I give you some pages and give you 20 minutes, just come back and go for this other role? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I went and sat in the waiting room and kind of learnt the role that I ended up playing, which was the crazy kind of meth head with the shotgun in the other room. And and ended up getting it. Now, what's really interesting about that is I did not know what a big deal Breaking Bad was.
Right.
It's so crazy because it was season 4, and you would think by season 4, that was the show the whole world was talking about.
Right.
It absolutely was not. It was a show that a couple of friends of mine got really excited about when I said I was doing it. They're like, that's the best show. I'm like, is it? I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it. Honestly, it didn't, I don't know how it had got to season, I think someone said because it went to Netflix later and that blew it up, but it was not the show on everybody's lips, even by season 4.
Right.
About the time it came out, maybe 6 months later, it was really starting to blow up. But for some reason, I didn't know what a big deal it was to be on that show.
Wow.
At the time.
How funny. What was that set like? What was it like working with Aaron Paul?
Lovely. I only worked with him.
Yeah.
But he's a sweetheart. Really, really nice guy. Just totally genuinely down to earth, lovely, lovely guy. And it was the one episode, the director of photography of the entire series got to direct one episode a season, and he was the director of that episode.
How brilliant.
And then the guy playing Mike was there too. I can't remember that actor's name. But,
Jonathan Banks.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Who I worked with on another show called Vegas, which also B. Ali Thomas had cast.
Yeah, look at that.
Anyway, but that was around that time, I guess, was when things started to feel like they were, doors were opening in a way that they hadn't before, because Justified had been on a couple of years now.
So when did you book Justified? How did that all come about?
That was just an audition. That was just a random audition that came up that was in that sort of rednecky. I'm sure that, having House of Wax on my demo reel would have helped get that audition, because it was a southern redneck kind of character. It was just came in as an audition for a new pilot. It was called Lawman, the pilot, and then they changed it because another show was called Lawman. I think it was like 2009, around then. And I just went in, and by then I'd played a couple of those characters. So I just sort of bunged on my general southern accent and did this audition. And I remember I was really sick. I had a really bad cold, so I was kind of like not really in a great mood for it. Like, I thought I'd not done a good job. I wasn't able to concentrate very well. And, but then I ended up getting that job, and it was just a pilot shooting in Pittsburgh. It was going to be a pilot that this character was not a series regular and never was a series regular. But when the show got picked up, they said, we want your character to be in the second episode, and wrote it back in, and then just kind of kept writing him back in all over the shop. I think it was in episode 1, 2, and 10 in the first season, and then it was just like that. You'd be in like episodes 3, 7, and 9. It was just like random until third season, and the fourth season I wasn't in at all, and then the fifth season I was in a lot because they sort of based it around Dewey's family.
Right.
But yeah, that was a joy. That whole thing was such a great job.
Wow. And I'm just curious as well, given, we haven't really talked about auditioning much yet, but you said like with the Breaking Bad audition, you had like 20 minutes to prep for that role. Um, what do you like with auditions? How do you prepare for auditions?
I really hate them.
Still hate them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not fun. It's not. I don't think they're fun. I mean, I know people are split into two different camps here, but I'm very much in favor of the self-test at home. I like doing it. I know a lot of people hate it. They miss the personal touch and the feedback, which is completely reasonable. I find that the nerves are too. The nerves mess with my performance too much in the room. I just that feeling of getting in front of people and having to prove that you're good, it makes me not good. I find it really hard. I don't know how I ever got a job that way, to be honest, because I find it so hard. Whereas at home, I like the control of, you're not nervous for a start. You can do as many takes as you want. You only send the takes you like. So I like all that.
Do you have readers you use all the time?
Usually just, a couple of different mates that do it for each other.
And what do you shoot on? Just an
iPhone now.
iPhone?
Yeah. I shoot it in cinematic mode. Looks good. Put up a blue sheet at the back. And I've got a good mic because I think having good sound is a good thing. It's almost the most important thing, actually.
And I've got to ask you about your. I think this is almost like something that I've quoted you in class before. The Damon Herriman turning your reader into a teleprompter technique.
This is giving away all my secrets, Ben. But no, this is something I started doing. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer.
Do you still do it?
Huh?
You still do it?
I still do it.
Okay.
Which is, it came about because I had an audition for something that was a monologue that big. Like it was the whole page. And on top of that, it was for something I didn't really want to go. Like I didn't care enough about it. I was like, I don't care if I get this or not. This is going to take me 3 solid days to learn. And I thought, maybe I can what if I was just held next to the camera and scrolled so that my eye line doesn't move up or down, and I'll just read it. And I did that, and I watched it back, and you couldn't tell. And I was just like, oh my God, light bulb
Ding.
Moment.
Yeah.
And pretty much, not every time, and obviously not if I go in the room, but pretty much now when I do a self-tape, that's how I tape. Because now you could just go, well, that's bloody lazy. And to some degree it is, but it's also taking some of the emotional toll off of investing in auditions, because when you are learning pages and pages of an audition that you don't get, and that happens week after week after week, there's a breaking point. There's only so much rejection you can take when you've been spending days and days and days learning something that you're not, you're learning lines for a role you've got. That's fine.
Yeah.
When you're learning lines for a role that you have a 0.5% chance of getting.
Yeah.
That's a big ask. And what I realized was that by doing it this way, not only did I not have to, the difference between how devastated I'd be when I didn't get something versus just like, that's a shame, A lot of that was to do with the fact that I hadn't spent days on it, you know. On top of that, I didn't see any loss in, like, I didn't think the audition was worse off because I was doing it that way.
Right.
It wasn't like I would go, I'm doing it like this because it's saving time, but it's actually not that great. I couldn't tell. And in fact, in a weird way, there was something about the fact that your eyes are so focused on this page, that you have you seem to be giving a very focused performance as well.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who do it now.
An intensity to it.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Because you're not kind of like searching for lines. You can actually free yourself of the brain space that would normally be taken up by having to remember stuff and actually just be in the moment more. And, after doing it a while, you end up you kind of see the other person's face on the page. Like it really it's kind of become second nature.
So the person just stands there, literally.
They're reading the same page,
and so they're standing there, kind of pointing at the line for you.
Well, you know what the line is. They just make sure that whatever line is being said is kept at the same height,
Right. Yeah.
and then your eye line doesn't go up and down, and it doesn't. And it's how I've got most roles I've done in the last 10 years.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. I'd go so far as to say I think I've got more roles doing it that way, which may or may not be because of that. I don't know, but I think I have had more roles since I started doing that.
Well, I've said before, I remember hearing Robert Downey Jr. say in a podcast that he either does his best work when he not only knows all of his lines, but everybody else's, or when he's having his lines fed to him through an earpiece.
Wow.
And that, that freedom that comes in not knowing your lines, in that middle ground that can be death for an actor, where you sort of know your lines, but not quite well enough that you're in your head trying to think, what's my next line, can really destroy your performance.
I completely agree with him. I've never done the earpiece thing. I hope I never have to, because I feel like that. I didn't know that he did that, but it turns out quite a few people do that.
Yeah, right.
But I guess the thing is, there's probably I don't ever want to go there, but I can imagine there would be a freedom to the fact that you just are completely in the moment. You don't have to have any fear of not remembering your lines.
Yep.
Because you're just going to hear it and then say it. And that I can see how that could work.
Well, really what you're doing is like the Brando school of acting, right? Like what he did on The Godfather.
Right. But I would...
And he won an Oscar for it.
I would never... Yeah, right. I would never suggest doing this on set, even though obviously people, very good actors like Marlon Brando have done.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's just an audition thing.
Yeah.
And it works for me. I have friends who've tried it and are addicted, and I have other friends who try and say, I don't like it.
Yeah. Amazing. How important is like fully committing in an audition? Like that 20 minutes that you had to come in and wow them with that meth head for Breaking Bad. Did you just go for it? I mean, that role really seems to have required that kind of full-blown commitment.
Yeah. I probably did something not dissimilar to what is on the show. Just kind of going, okay, this guy's really high on meth. He's, covered in sores. His top's off. He's holding a shotgun. He's really angry. He's really on edge. He could blow someone's head off at any moment. So, you can't sort of do that by halves if you want to get the role. Look, I don't know. Sometimes with auditions, especially with the self-tape where you don't have feedback, sometimes if I'm really unsure what, if you think this could go one of two ways, like this could be, let's say it's someone who's very sinister and you're thinking, I could do like, kind of crazy, wild-eyed kind of guy, or I could do a really, under quiet, sinister thing here. And this scene could work either way. Sometimes I would do both and send both of those versions because one of them might be the one that's going to get you the job. And the other one, if you'd only sent that, they might be like, oh, no, we need someone who's got a bit more oomph to them than that. And if you'd only sent that other version, because that is the other thing that you realize, people, people who are watching tapes a lot of the time assume that's your version of it, and there's no other version that you can do.
Right.
I mean, the people who are good at their job, don't think that way. But certainly over the years, I've had that experience where, well, even just from that thing that used to happen to me years ago, where I'd say, "Oh, can I get an audition for this?" And they'd say, "Damon's not right," and I'd think, "Yeah, they think I'm not right because they saw me do that other character who was this nerdy guy, and this guy's a scary guy. That's why they're saying that." Because the only not right based on what? It doesn't say he has to be 6'5" tall.
Right.
That would be not right. I'm not that tall, so that would be not right. It doesn't say he has to be 18. I can't play that. It just says he's a bad guy, and so when you show one version of something, especially when you're starting out and people haven't seen a whole range of stuff. It gets easier the more you do it, because over the years people see you do a range of different things and they know what you can or can't do. But when you're starting out, they think, oh, well, that's your version of that. And oftentimes when it's an audition at the start of your career, if you only send one version of something, they're going to think, that's their version. They're very good, but that's not what we're going for. Right. We want someone really loud and over the top and big, and that person could have done that as well, but they just didn't send that tape.
Right. It's always a good idea to send two versions.
I think when you're starting, when they don't know you, especially if the role could go, I wouldn't say it's necessary every time, you know, but I think a lot of the time that it is worth doing especially if you think to yourself, a couple of ways I could go with this, then do both. And then, you know, label it version 1 and version 2 so that when they watch the first one, they know there's going to be another one afterwards.
Great tip. Another question I wanted to ask you about was the importance of relationships. You mentioned earlier that Joel helped put in a good word for you with Jeff Nichols and getting bike riders and some other roles. One of the things that, you know, I've always really admired about you is you have just such a wide network of friends and so many people who think the world of you. And I remember some of those legendary birthday parties that you used to put on both here and in LA.
Yeah.
How important is it to kind of maintain those relationships in this industry and for lack of a better word, network, but really, I guess, just like build friendships?
Yeah, for me, it was always friendships. Yeah. I never felt like there was networking going on. I'm sure that, you know, effectively it was a form of networking when you create friendships within the community of actors and other filmmakers and people who put theatre shows on. And of course, it is having the same effect. But I think it's really important having those friends and communities, especially, you know, in your 20s and 30s. Like, that, you know, when people get a bit older, that people have families, and you do lose a bit of that. And it's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah.
Because it used to be a thing that, you know, you would always be, weekend would come and, you know, there'd be a group of, you know, 15 to 30 people who would randomly turn up at the same pub because that's where they knew they were all going to be. And you would get excited by the idea of, oh, you know, would you want to come to my place? We're going to read this play, or do you want to help us out on this short film? Or, you know, all this stuff that kind of got your juices flowing creatively. And yeah, ultimately was, I guess, a form of networking that led to other work, but it was less kind of conscious and less sort of contrived of, oh, I've got to be here so I can meet these people. And because there's a version of that which can just annoy people, you know what I mean? Like, someone might say, you know, I'm going to go to the Actor Awards and network or something, and you think, when someone says that, oftentimes it's someone who you realize is probably just going to be a bother to whoever it is that they're going to, you know, sort of frap in a corner somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, and not to say that, you know, look, obviously you want to go to the Actor Awards, go to have a fun night, but the idea of going to something like that is very different from you and your own community of friends getting stuff happening. Going to a thing like that and thinking that, you know, George Miller is going to want to have time to talk to you. He's the loveliest guy out there, but he probably has his own friends he's going to talk to that night. You know what I mean? So that version of networking, I think, is probably not as successful and not as good a look, you know, as well. I think doing it sort of organically through the people in the industry that you make friends with and kind of make stuff together. That seems to be the best way to do that.
At this stage in your career, what does success look like for you? What do you have goals that for your career coming up?
I feel like, honestly, I've been so fortunate in the last sort of 15 years, in a way that I never genuinely ever imagined that I would feel that for my definition of success, for me, I feel like I've achieved it just because it's beyond what I expected. Maybe I just had very low expectations, but so I kind of pinch myself at the opportunities I've had and the people I've got to work with and the roles I've had a chance to play and all that stuff. So I don't sort of. Sometimes I wish I was a bit more goal driven and because there are those people who would be where I'm at and go, okay, we're here now. What's next? Let's take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wish I was a bit more like that. But because I think sometimes those people do actually, that actually does work. If you're really driven, you do end up getting climbing up the ladder of success. But look, it's not to say I just sit back and wait for the phone to ring. I still I do writing and stuff. That's the scripts that I'm hoping to make at some point that are feature length or TV stuff. So those are all things that I'm interested in. But in terms of success, career-wise, acting-wise, if I can just keep working at the rate and on the quality of jobs that have been coming along in the last few years, I'll be very happy.
Any final words of advice for young actors that are just starting out?
It's something I thought of the other day, actually, which is, I think when you're a young actor, the one thing I would say is try and get the balance right between the realist in you and the dreamer in you, because especially going to LA and having spent a lot of time there and seeing a lot of Australians that have gone there, a lot of whom are just, doing jobs other than acting now, and that's sort of gone by the wayside, or they've spent all their savings, and I think working out that balance between those two things is really important, because if you're too much of a dreamer and you're not enough of a realist, you'll spend your entire life savings to go and live in LA when you've never had an acting job in your life, and you're actually 57 years old, and this is insane, right? Like there's got to be a bit of realist, otherwise you're going to starve, right? You still got to pay the bills and buy food. But at the same time, if there's too much of a realist in you, which is probably where I sat, you can be like, why would they want me? I'm not gonna go up and speak to that person, or I'm not gonna write a letter to that director, or I'm not gonna go back to LA again, or if you're too much of the realist, you're not gonna make those decisions that, like, you know what, I will send that. We'll send my reel to that person, or we'll write to that theater company, or we'll make that trip. And I think getting that balance right is really important, apart from anything else, for your mental health, because if you're too much of a dreamer and you end up going, why have I wasted my life? I'm broke. That's going to be really depressing. And if you're too much of a realist and you actually just didn't do anything, if you sat there going, I wish I was an actor, and they did literally nothing about it, you're going to get to 80 and go, why didn't I do something? I should have done something. So I would say just have a think about those two things and work out what the balance is for you and where it's right, where it's realistic. If you are a really good actor and you're 19 and you happen to be good looking as well on top of it, you can afford to be a bit more of a dreamer. Because you know what? You're also being a realist as well. You probably are going to get work.
Right.
But so that would be my advice.
Amazing. Well, Damon, we could sit and talk to you all day, but I think on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Ben. It's been a lot of fun.